I grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I grew up hearing stories from my grandmother and the other elders. Stories about things that lived in the darkness. Stories about rules you had to follow if you wanted to stay safe. Most people my age dismissed these as superstitions. Old tales meant to scare children into behaving. I was one of those people. I left the reservation at 18, went to college in Denver, got a job in the city. I thought I had outgrown the old ways. I thought the elders were just clinging to outdated beliefs. I was wrong. I am telling this story as a warning, not because I think anyone will believe me, but because someone might, and that someone might remember my words on a quiet night when they feel the urge to whistle a tune into the darkness. There were rules I grew up hearing. Do not point at the stars. Do not speak the names of the dead after sunset. Do not look directly at an owl that calls your name. And above all, never whistle after the sun goes down. I broke that last rule 3 years ago. I did not actually whistle, but I came close enough that it did not matter. I have not whistled since. I never will again. Let me tell you what happened. My grandmother, Eleanor Crowfeather, fell ill in the autumn of that year. Not seriously, the doctors said, but she was 84 years old and living alone. My parents had passed years ago. My sister lived in California with her own family. I was the only one who could come. I took a leave of absence from my job and drove from Denver to Pine Ridge. It was a long drive, almost 6 hours, and I arrived late in the evening. The sun had already set by the time I pulled onto the dirt road that led to her property. Her house was small, weathered, but sturdy. She had lived there for over 50 years. The nearest neighbor was almost a mile away. Out here, the darkness was complete. No street lights, no city glow on the horizon, just the stars overhead and the black shape of the hills against the sky. My grandmother was waiting for me on the porch despite the cold. She looked frailer than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp as ever. She hugged me and told me she was glad I came, but there was something in her voice, a tension I did not understand. That first night, she fed me soup and fry bread and asked about my life in the city. I told her about my job, my apartment, a woman I had been seeing. Normal things, safe things. Before I went to bed, she grabbed my arm with surprising strength. She looked me in the eyes and said just one thing. Do not whistle after dark, no matter what you hear, no matter what you think you see. Do not whistle. I promised her I would not. I thought she was just being superstitious. I could not sleep that first night. The silence was overwhelming after years of city living. No traffic, no sirens, no neighbors playing music through thin walls. Just the wind and the creaking of the old house. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, unable to quiet my mind. Around midnight, I heard something outside. A sound carried on the wind. At first, I thought it was a coyote, but then I realized what it was. Whistling. Someone was whistling in the darkness outside the house. A simple tune, just a few notes repeated over and over. It sounded distant, maybe out by the tree line at the edge of my grandmother's property. I got up and went to the window. I could not see anything. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the darkness was absolute. But the whistling continued, the same notes, the same rhythm. over and over. I felt a strange urge to whistle back. The tune was so simple, so catchy. It lodged itself in my brain, and my lips almost formed the notes without my permission. I caught myself just in time, remembering my grandmother's warning. I stood at the window for almost an hour, listening. The whistling never stopped. It never got closer or farther away. It just continued, patient and steady, until the first grey light of dawn touched the horizon. Then it stopped mid-note, cutting off suddenly as if someone had flipped a switch. I did not sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I walked out to the tree line where I thought the sound had come from. The ground was soft from recent rain, but there were no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there at all. I told myself it must have been the wind, some trick of the landscape funneling air through the branches in a way that sounded like whistling. It was a rational explanation, a comfortable explanation. I almost believed it. That morning, I asked my grandmother about the whistling. I tried to sound casual about it, like I was just curious about local wildlife. Could it have been a bird, some kind of night creature I was not familiar with? Her face went pale. She set down her coffee cup with shaking hands and asked me to describe exactly what I heard. I did, mimicking the tune as best I could, without actually whistling it. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she told me a story. When she was a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, she had a brother named Thomas. He was 2 years younger than her, full of energy and stubbornness. He did not believe in the old stories either. He thought the elders were foolish, clinging to superstitions that had no place in the modern world. One summer night, Thomas went out walking after dark. He liked to walk, liked the peace and quiet of the prairie at night. Their mother warned him not to whistle. Thomas laughed and said he would whistle if he wanted to. He did not come home that night, or the next morning, or ever. They found his body 3 days later, almost 2 miles from the house. He was lying in the tall grass with no visible injuries, but his face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. His lips were pursed, still formed in the shape of a whistle. The official cause of death was exposure. He had wandered off and died of the cold, they said. But it was the middle of summer. The nights were warm, and Thomas knew that land better than anyone. My grandmother finished her story and looked at me with wet eyes. She told me that what I heard last night was not the wind. It was not a bird. It was something that lives in the darkness, something older than the reservation, older than our people. It whistles to draw people out, and if you whistle back, it knows you can hear it. Then it comes for you. I spent the day helping my grandmother around the house, trying to distract myself from her story. I fixed a leaky faucet. I cleared leaves from the gutters. I drove into town to pick up groceries and her prescription medications. By the time the sun went down, I had almost convinced myself that the previous night was just my imagination. Stress and exhaustion playing tricks on me. I was not used to the quiet of the reservation anymore. My mind was filling the silence with phantom sounds. That night, the whistling came back. It started around 11, the same tune as before, the same notes in the same order. But this time it sounded closer. Not at the tree line anymore, somewhere in the yard. I went to the window again. This time the moon was out, casting pale light across the property. I could see the old truck in the driveway. I could see my grandmother's garden, already harvested for the year. I could see the wooden fence that marked the edge of the yard, and standing just beyond the fence, half hidden in shadow, I could see a figure. It was shaped like a person, tall and thin, with arms that seemed too long for its body. I could not make out any features. It was just a silhouette, a darker darkness against the night. It was whistling. My heart pounded. My hands gripped the windowsill so hard my knuckles turned white. The figure did not move. It just stood there, whistling that same simple tune. And even though I could not see its face, I knew it was looking at me. I wanted to call out. I wanted to ask who was there, what they wanted. But more than anything, I wanted to whistle back. The urge was overwhelming, like an itch deep in my brain that I could not scratch. My lips kept trying to form the notes. I bit down on my tongue until I tasted blood. The pain helped me focus. I backed away from the window and did not look outside again until morning. When the sun came up, the figure was gone, but the grass where it had been standing was brown and dead, a perfect circle of withered vegetation in the shape of footprints. I knew I needed help. This was beyond anything I could understand or handle on my own. I needed to talk to someone who knew the old ways better than my grandmother, someone who might know how to protect against whatever was visiting me at night. My grandmother suggested I visit Henry Running Bear, an elder who lived on the other side of the reservation. Henry was a medicine man, one of the few left who still practiced the traditional ceremonies. If anyone could help, it would be him. I drove out to Henry's place that afternoon. It was an even more remote property than my grandmother's, a small house surrounded by open prairie with the distant shapes of the Black Hills on the horizon. Henry was ancient, his face a map of wrinkles, his hair pure white and worn in 2 long braids. But his eyes were bright and alert. He invited me inside without asking why I had come, as if he already knew. I told him everything. The whistling, the figure, the overwhelming urge to whistle back. Henry listened without interrupting, nodding slowly at certain points in the story. When I finished, Henry was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. He told me about an entity his people had known about for generations. It had many names, but most simply called it the Night Whistler. It was not a ghost. It was not a demon in the way white people understood demons. It was something else entirely. Something that existed in the spaces between this world and another place. A place of endless darkness and hunger. The Night Whistler hunted by sound. It whistled to find those who could hear it. Most people could not. Most people were deaf to its call, protected by their disbelief. But those who grew up with the old stories, those who had even a spark of belief buried somewhere inside them, they could hear it.